are a visionary, an entrepreneur, a business owner. You want to make money from your passion and create the freedom that you've dreamed of. But it's slow. The income is slow, the impact is slow, and the freedom is slow. And here's the kicker. You've actually never been busier. You're working longer than ever, burning through daylight, and your family have forgotten who you are. You're tired and frustrated and you can't even sleep well at night. The business just feels so heavy, and all you ever wanted to do was just make the money you want to make, doing the things that you want to do. And that's where I come in. Hi, if we haven't met yet, my name is Dr. Brooklyn Storm, and I'm the host of the Business Acceleration Podcast, where we shift your business from heavy to light, time poor to time abundant, and from income lack to income growth. We're going to achieve it together with my 20 years experience as a psychologist, helping people just like you to break through their barriers. And we're going to throw in a little of the woo as well. So thank you so much for pushing play today. Let's begin. Hello, everybody, and Merry Christmas. I hope that you're having the best day ever. I hope your bellies are full, that you're listening to this while you're in a food coma, that you're nice and relaxed. You've had a beautiful day with family. And yeah, today I am going to give you the gift of this podcast, which hopefully it's going to be a gift. And I'm going to be talking with you about how you can overcome self-doubt. And I think if you're a business owner like I am, it's probably a very human thing to feel like you're not so confident sometimes in business. And this topic today came through by request from Thomas. And I'm more than happy to do requests. I've been asking for them. So I was so excited to get this topic today. So what is it? Okay, self-doubt is really when you're not believing in your ability to do something. There's a little bit of a mismatch there perhaps between what you can do and what the expectations are that we have for ourselves. And I think a lot of the time self-doubt is linked with ego, and I'll talk with you about that in a moment. I was thinking, what example can I share of a time where I had self-doubt? Because I have doubted myself so many times, but I wanted to use an example that was really clear that maybe you could follow. So I will go back to the example I've mentioned before. I was running my psychology practice and I was completely and entirely bulk billing, and I had made a decision to start introducing fees. And I needed to do that for all sorts of reasons that were discussed in another episode. But I felt nervous about it. I wasn't 100% confident that this was going to go over too well. I was working in my practice, which was located on the Mornington Peninsula in beautiful Victoria, Australia, and it was thriving. It was doing really, really well. We had full books and little wait list and everything was great. But the money coming in wasn't enough to sustain the growth of the practice. And so we needed to look at introducing fees. So what I did was I notified all of the referring doctors in the area, so I'm a psychologist in my other life, and I let them know, hey, from now on there's going to be a fee. I'm not doing the, air quotes, free counselling anymore. So in Australia we have a service called bulk billing, which is where Medicare or the government subsidise the cost of psychology, and they pay, what's now almost less than a third of what a normal session fee would be. So it's just not viable. And there are less and less psychologists doing it for that reason. But anyway, so I let all of the doctors know, and I let my clients know, and I, did nice things like I had a grandfather period, so it wasn't going to affect existing clients too much. That wasn't going to disrupt their existing services, but it meant that new people coming on board were going to have to pay this fee. Anyway, guess what happened? The same day that I notified all of the doctors in the area, a doctor, there's two situations. So one doctor that had been referring clients to me sent me a fax, and what he did was he just hand wrote a fax, and it was about half a page long, telling me I was a mean, nasty person for charging, and that he was going to stop referring clients to me, and he was going to destroy my business by not sending me any work. So that was the first thing that happened. And then, I have never encountered anything like that before, and I was really shaken by it because I just thought, hey, this is my business, what's going on? Is this guy going to destroy my business? And can he do that? And how does this even happen? And why would somebody be so nasty and mean? And anyway, I was really emotional in response to that. And shortly after, I got another fax from another doctor. And he was saying something similar, like, oh, you're grabbing at money, you want to be rich and all of this sort of stuff. And you don't really care about, people who can't afford psychology and counselling. You're a horrible person. And so it went on. I've still got both of these faxes. I don't know why. I should probably just get rid of them, and maybe I will after I've done this recording, actually. I don't know why I've still got them. But anyway, so it was really upsetting. And then what happened was the next day I was at the office and I had a lady working with me, and she hadn't been with me for very long. She was just new. And she answered the phone. And one day she answered the phone, and this other doctor number 3, rang up, and he gave her a earful over the phone as well. And he said to her that, we were, again, just horrible and mean and nasty. And who did we think we were that we could start charging money? Now, mind you, guess how much I was charging? $15, $15. I mean, I can't believe 3 doctors would take the time to take the time out of their day to come and, be like this, behave like this. It was really, really horrible. And, the girl who answered the phone, she was in tears. She was upset. I had to call this doctor back and say, please don't ring up and abuse my team like this. This is not okay. And anyway, I went home, and for a few days I was kind of in a daze, actually. I was in shock that, the medical profession could treat a colleague like this. And I was questioning myself. I was thinking, well, am I mean and nasty for asking people for $15 to come and get some therapy with me? And it really did cause me to stop what I was doing and think about whether or not this was a direction that I still wanted to take the business in. And I decided that I did, and I reconciled it myself, and I just thought, well, I know that I have to let some people go in order to create space for the right people to come in. And even with that new mindset, which helped a lot, it still took a little while for me to feel more confident in charging fees. Now it's no problem at all, but back then it was really, really difficult. And I think one of the things that happened for me was that I was linking my ego into what was happening. I was placing my belief about myself into what was happening. And because what these 3 doctors were saying was triggering something that I already kind of had a belief about, because do you remember, like, I grew up in poverty in Melbourne, and, no money whatsoever. And, people around me always used to talk about rich people being mean and not nice and money grabbing. And so when I started introducing a fee, I still had that thought in the back of my head. So what's happened is it's come back to me by these 3 doctors. And then what's happened from that is I've then thought, maybe I am that mean person, maybe I am horrible, etc., etc. Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing by introducing fees. So when your identity is linked to the ego, then there's a good chance that you too are going to experience self-doubt when it comes to running your business. So ego is really around identifying yourself by what you, like, for example, do for work. Like, you might say, hi, I'm Brooklyn, I'm a coach. Or, hi, I'm, Denise, and I'm a belly dancer. Hi, I'm Derek, and I'm a florist. Right? So identifying by what you do. You might identify by your religion or your spirituality. You might identify by your sexuality or your gender. You might identify by the country that you live in. It doesn't really matter, but it's something, you're identifying with something outside of you. Okay? Your job is not you. You are not your job. Your job's something you do. Your country is not you. You are part of your country. It's outside of you. Okay, your favorite football team, you might identify as a Collingwood supporter, like me. Yes, and I don't want to get any comments about Collingwood. So, Collingwood football team is something that's outside of me, isn't it? It's not something that's within me. So when I'm attributing my belief about myself to things that are happening in the outside world, I'm making myself susceptible to changes in the outside world affecting how I think and what I believe and how I feel about myself. Does that make sense? Okay. So, there's all sorts of examples of this happening in business. You probably know or have heard of people who were doing really, really well in business. Maybe they were turning over a lot of money. Maybe they had really big teams. Maybe they had a national presence or something. And they were known as that guy or they were known as that lady. And then something's happened and they've lost it all. And then they fall into a deep depression and they think their life is over. It's because there's been an over-identification on what they do for work. Okay? But here is the thing. There is a law of perpetual transmutation of energy, and this states very clearly that things are always in a state of flux. And it's the same with our ego. So ego is just energy as well, right? And so it is going to be going up and down, up and down, up and down. And an up ego we would know as, an inflated ego, and a down ego we would know as a deflated ego. So an inflated ego is when you're walking around with your chest puffed out and you think you're the biscuit, you think that you're nailing it in all these different areas and, you're untouchable virtually. Like you're just grinning from ear to ear all the time and everything you touch turns to gold. And then there's the flip side of that, which is where your ego is deflated and you feel like worthless because you're not nailing it, you're not killing it, you're not smashing it. You feel not good enough, maybe not competent enough, and all of this sort of stuff starts to creep in. But in understanding the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, what we also know is that just like ego inflates and deflates, we can exert some control over that by shifting our vibration. And there are lots of ways that we can do that. So I'm going to go over them for you now. The first one is that we create by exploring first our beliefs. So for example, we need to eyeball what do you believe about this situation in your business. So using my example of introducing fees, I might look at all of the things I believed at the time about introducing fees. So I might have written down things like, oh, it's mean to charge people money when they can't afford it. Nobody's going to be on board with me charging fees. I'm going to be ostracized from my community for charging fees, blah, blah, blah. All the things that fees mean to me, I would have written down. And that's not an easy thing to do because it's hard, putting something from inside your mind to down on paper is really hard because when it's down on paper, suddenly it's real and it's in the world and it's here and you're looking at it and it can be very confronting. However, it's in it being confronting that the gold is, because that will allow you then to create change. So what you might want to do is ask yourself a few questions. You might say, well, what do I believe about this situation? You might say, where did that belief originate? Okay. So for me, with using that story about the fees, sorry, I've got a very squeaky chair. With that story about the fees, my belief originated from my upbringing and from my experiences growing up. Okay. Then I might ask myself, well, what would I rather believe about charging fees? And maybe I would write down a whole list of things that I would rather believe about charging fees, like I would rather believe that charging fees feels easy and I can find a way that is more comfortable for me to introduce them. I believe that by charging fees, people will be more likely to value the service and get a better result. I believe that by charging the fees, people will be more likely to do the homework and comply with the therapy because they've got more skin in the game. I believe, right, like that. So then you want to write down all the things that you would really rather believe about that situation, okay? And if you get stuck, if you have a mental block with that, something that can be helpful is to think about someone you really respect or you look up to or you admire and try and channel them in some way. Think to yourself, well, how would this person handle it? What would this person's mindset be? What would this person believe about charging fees? Okay, so if you're into self-development, self-improvement, maybe you're going to think about Tony Robbins. Maybe you can imagine what would Tony Robbins think about charging fees and write that down, okay? That's just a little tip to help you there. Another question might be, what would open up for me or become available to me if I did adopt one of these new beliefs that I've just written down? How cool is that, And what would that feel like? What would that version of you feel like if she or he was adopting that new belief around fees? I mean, let's say, for example, if you were going to say, well, I believe that I can help more people because I'll be more likely to engage if they're contributing financially towards the cost of therapy. How do you show up differently at work then? How do you show up differently in a session then? How do you show up differently in your marketing then? How do you show up differently in a phone call with a client then? All of that sort of stuff, okay? Another tool for dealing with self-doubt is compassion. And, I learned a lot about compassion because, I studied Buddhism and I loved it so much. I was never expecting to study it. It came about quite randomly. I was, okay, this is a little bit of a story here and I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but in case you didn't know by now, I test everything before I share it with people. And at the time, there was a lot of hoo-ha about mindfulness, and I wasn't that sold on mindfulness. I think looking back, it was probably just that the PD, that the professional development training I'd gone to, hadn't been overly inspiring. I had also tried to put together programs for a company that I was contracted to work for on mindfulness, and I wasn't overly pleased with them because although they were all grounded in the evidence and the research, because I wasn't on board with it myself, I still didn't see the benefit of mindfulness then myself. It didn't sit right with me. And so anyway, I just thought to myself, listen, if everybody's talking about it and clients are coming in wanting it, then I need to find out more about it. And so I went online to look at the origins of mindfulness, and I found that it had its roots in Buddhism. And so then I thought, okay, well, I want to go and talk to a Buddhist monk about this, and I'm just going to go straight to the source. This is what I mean. Like sometimes I just go off on a tangent. But anyway, so I found a Buddhist monk. There's a Buddhist temple in the area where I work, and I went down there, and turns out I love it. I think there's something to be said for experiencing something from the source directly, because it hadn't been the mindfulness that I was learning from the Lama there was, and his name's Lama Tender, and I just think he's the best Lama in the whole entire world, because the way that he shares knowledge and the way that he taught me about mindfulness was in a very conversational way, very collegial way. There was no jargon. It wasn't clinical, nothing like that. And it made a lot of sense to me, the way that he was explaining it and the exercises and the tools that we were doing. And anyway, it was while I was studying with him that I also learned about compassion. And before that, I knew what compassion was and I knew how to be compassionate, but I didn't have the same in-depth knowledge about compassion and compassion practice that I do now. And I credit what I know now and who I am now largely to the study that I did with him. But there's a meditation that you can do if you're so inclined. It's called a metta meditation, and you can Google this. I used to just listen to one on YouTube. You might want to listen to a couple and just see which one sits most comfortably with you. And essentially, a meditation teaches you about how to have loving kindness, not only for yourself, but for others around you and for other people in the world. And it's a really, really beautiful meditation to do. I think it only takes about 10 and 15 minutes, but it was life-changing for me the first time that I did it, because I was able to bring to mind a painful situation, and it was by using this meditation that I was able to work through it and resolve it, forgive, forget, move forward, and all of that sort of stuff. So I think learning about how to have kindness and compassion for yourself, learning how to do that and apply it, can absolutely help shift your sense of, self-doubt over to self-belief. It's just part of the journey. It's not the whole journey. It's just one part. The last thing was you can absolutely apply the universal law of polarity. When you're saying that you have self-doubt, what you're really saying is that you want more self-belief. Okay? So law of polarity is just, we're saying everything in the world has polar opposites. There's a good and a bad, a right and a wrong, an up and a down, a masculine energy and a feminine energy, right? So by understanding the law of polarity and applying it here, what we're able to see is, okay, if this concept or construct rather of self-doubt is at one end of the spectrum, what's on the other? Well, that's self-belief. So we know that we need self-belief is the destination, and now we just need to fill out the map for how to get you there. So there are some ways that you might be able to get to self-belief as well. These can also include things like building on prior successes. Now, a really super easy way to do this is, if you're using a gratitude journal, write down 3 things that went really well for you at work today, in your business today, okay? And maybe they might not be the 3 things that you set out to achieve in that day. They might be 3 other random things. Maybe it might be you got some nice feedback from a client. Maybe it might be you signed up your first client. Maybe it might be you moved into your new premises or you signed a lease. Maybe it's, something good that happened, or a successful thing that happened was you successfully wrote and posted a job advertisement. Okay, it can be anything, but think about 3 things that you did well in the day and write them down, and periodically look back over those things. You could also write them on the wall. Last year I used to have a great big cork board, and I was screenshotting and printing out anything nice that people said to me. It sounds ridiculous, but it was really, really great. It turned into like this great big board that would affirm for me that I was on the right path when I was experiencing self-doubt, because I could look at it and there might be one screenshot of a client saying, she'd managed to overcome something and thanking me. Maybe there was another screenshot of a message in Messenger saying how somebody had read my book and had experienced something positive as a result of that, and et cetera, right? All sorts of different things. But looking at that board was a way for me to affirm for myself when I was feeling doubtful that, yes, I can do it. Yes, I'm capable. Yes, I'm competent. But also knowing that I'm more than my successes, I'm more than my failures, I'm more than my job, okay? All of these things are just things that I do, right? So recognizing success in terms of business is great when you're talking about business, but when we're talking about overcoming self-doubt and cultivating self-belief, we also want to look at how are you being successful as a person? Right? What does that look like for you? How are you cultivating self-belief? Think about your values. Think about, what are they? What Are you valuing truth? Are you valuing honesty, integrity, kindness, respect, all those sorts of things? It comes back to that whole idea of the Be Do Have model by Zig Ziglar. Who are you being is more important than what you're doing. And when you focus on who you're being, that's when you'll find that the self-doubt just evaporates. It will just disappear and dissolve, because you're now not hooking into ego anymore. You're now not looking at the external world, at extraneous things to feel good about yourself. Yep. Okay. And then the last one there might be to change your expectations to something that's less heavy, that feels a little bit lighter for you about this particular area that you're having the self-doubt in. Now, as you know, I'm like all about transformational questions at the moment. I know I go through phases, but this is my current phase. So let's let's make hay while the sun shines. Because I've actually had a few emails from people who took the time to hit the email me now button in my show notes. I can't believe it. I was so excited. But you're liking the questions. So, okay, I'm going to keep doing the questions and we'll see how we go. So here are some questions that you can write down and you can reflect on when you're having moments of self-doubt in your business, okay? So the first question is, am I creating purpose or cultivating hopelessness? Okay, am I creating purpose or cultivating hopelessness? The second question, what would self-belief look like for me? What would self-belief look like for me? The third question is, what would become available to me if I had self-belief? What would become available to me if I had self-belief? And then the fourth and the last question, what 3 things can I do today that will move me closer in the direction of self-belief? What 3 things can I do today that will move me closer to the direction of self-belief? Okay, so that's today's podcast. How cool is that? I love it. For me, this whole idea of self-belief being linked to the external just makes so much sense. And please, guys, remember that you are more than what you do and who you barrack for and who you follow on Instagram. You are a whole person. You're a spiritual being full of all of these amazing energies just coursing through your body, mind, and soul. And you are so much bigger than you give yourself credit for. Okay, if you lost it all tomorrow and you're able to believe in yourself, then losing everything isn't going to matter. Okay, having self-belief, knowing what your values are, knowing what you believe to be true about yourself or important and things like that is going to help anchor you so that you can operate from a place of stability in the business. And honestly, your business needs you to be stable. If you're all over the shop and you're getting emotional, or you're turning up to work and you're saying, oh, I don't know if I can do a Facebook Live, oh, I don't know if I can do this, maybe I shouldn't do that, and you've got all of this doubt and you're not making decisions, or you're being you're making decisions and changing your mind and all of that sort of jazz, all that's not going to have a fantastic effect on your business, is it? I would suggest, as I said before, shift your focus from what you're doing to who you are being, okay? Who are you being? That's where you're going to find your self-belief, and that's where you're going to be able to release the self-doubt. I hope you love this episode. If you are wanting to explore some of this stuff more for yourself because maybe you can see yourself in it, I would love to help you. And I do have coaching program starting in January, and I'd love to connect with you and give you some more information about that. So I'll put my email in the show notes, and if you would like to touch base and have a chat about what's involved, please do get in touch with me. The other thing too is if you're not in the mood for coaching, but you're somebody who doesn't like to go into Facebook groups and talk about her problems or, the dramas that you're experiencing in business, that's fine. I have put together a service for you. It's called Your Secret Angel, and this service is a subscription service. It's a 12-month subscription, and it entitles you to get a half hour of business support every month. And it's a tax deduction for your business. It's a business expense. It's related to your business. So it's not going to cost you anything. But it could absolutely help you get a more peaceful night's sleep for when dramas do happen. And trust me, they're going to happen. And it's so much easier to navigate through them when you have an angel in your corner that's going to be able to support you through it and give you some guidance and some reassurance and, of course, just some TLC and some care. That's my job, and that's all confidential. No need to join Facebook groups and no, that's just between you and I. So I hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for subscribing to the podcast. If you loved it, leave a review and let me know what your biggest takeaway was. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Merry Christmas. Bye. Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope that you enjoyed it and got a lot of value from it. Help me help others by sharing this podcast. And if you feel called to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, remember to let me know so that I can send you a very special thank you gift. Now go and build your dream business, and I will see you next time. Bye.